Good to have y'all with me today. Thanks for joining in on this Wednesday training. We're going to talk about how to draft your sermon in a single afternoon. Yes, it is possible, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. We're going to see why 4 hours guided prep is better than 12 hours of scattered study. It's better than 15. It's better than 20 hours of scattered study because this 4 hour model is going to be, I hope, really helpful and change your life, not just your preaching life, but your pastoral life, your personal life. I really believe this is going to be something special and helpful for you. So I'm glad you're here. What we're going to do is first, with regard to our thesis here, we're going to aim for this to be true for you, which is why you can draft a biblically deep, theologically robust, gospel rich, life changing, expository sermon in a single afternoon. And again, it's by trading 12 hours of scattered study for 4 hours of a guided process through the Preach360 Sermon Studio. And as a bonus, you will reclaim margin for ministry and you're going to have a real day off. It's going to have some really positive benefits, not just for your preaching, but for your life as well. So our plan is I'm going to do a pretty fast-paced presentation. And then we'll look at a kind of behind the scenes demonstration of what the Preach360 Sermon Studio looks like and how it works. Then some time for questions, any comments you've got. So be sure to post questions and comments in the chat. This is a webinar format. So I'm presenting and you can participate, no obligation to participate. But if you want to participate, then use the chat to do that. And when we get to the Q&A, I will go in the order of those things that are posted. Again, my name is McKay Caston, and I am just thrilled that you're here because of what this can do for your life and your preaching ministry itself. So with that, let's dive in. And what I want to first talk about, and this is going to be fast, okay, is the glorious calling of preaching the gospel. I mean, this is a privilege. We volunteered for this because we wanted this. We knew about the weekends and the Saturdays and that sort of thing. And we knew, but because we want to help people come alive to the wonder and the beauty and the transforming power of God's grace in Jesus, we wanted to do this. And when we approach the process of prep and preaching, at some level, we know this is not a have to. We don't want to be in a position where this is now something we have to do. We want this to be something that we get to do, that we look forward to doing, that becomes the highlight of our week, is preparing a gospel feast for folks on Sundays. And if that is the way it is supposed to be, then why does it feel like such a burden? Why do so many people that come in contact with our ministry say the same thing about how hard it is? Not just the process of prep and things, but how hard the pastoral life is. And part of that is because of the heavy toll that it takes. And I'll give you some insight on why it's so heavy. It doesn't have to be as heavy as it is. But part of it is that we live with the stress of an unfinished sermon. It's just always there. It follows us everywhere. It even on, let's say we have a day off, that day off becomes not really a day away to have mental refreshment and renewal spiritually. It becomes a day to work out of the office on the sermon, even if we're not actively. We have our phones. We're out doing that. Even if we're at one of our kids' soccer games, we can still pull ourselves away and do some work on that. It becomes all consuming, not just the unfinished sermon, but the stress of it. And the reason is that for a lot of us, we simply don't have a really clear blueprint of how to build the message. We could look at different metaphors. We could look at the walking through the woods metaphor, where it's the difference between hacking your way through a jungle and following a trail that's already been cut for you. It's that different. And if we don't have that paved road, if we're having every week to start with our machete and just hack our way to the end and finally, hopefully we have a sermon, that is exhausting. And it is mentally taxing and it's stressful. It really is. And so what I want to provide for you is that roadmap, or is the blueprint. And not just for the big parts of your sermon, but for all the developmental pieces as well, so that you will never wonder, where do I start? What do I do next? And how can I know that I'm done? This is going to be a a roadmap and a blueprint. If we don't have that, if we're always under the sermon stress, the pressure of that, then it's really hard to be fully present with people. And a lot of us love to spend 30 hours in our study, but a lot of us would prefer to spend those 30 hours with people. And not that we don't want to do our study, but that we want that to be efficient and effective so that we can be around the people to whom we will be sharing the gospel. We want to do people ministry as much as in the study, prep work. Both are important. Both are really important. But for those of us who really want to be around people, it's hard with that mental uncertainty of the sermon always hanging over you because there's always more to do. And you can't be fully present with people that way. And we can't be fully present with our families either. And that's something else that is a challenge for many of us. So it is a glorious calling to preach the gospel of Jesus. There is a heavy toll that a lot of us are bearing and a weight that we're carrying. So what I want to show you briefly is the biblical framework that is going to set you free. And is going to bring you incredible joy in preparing sermons. There's an illustration that if you've read Brian Chappell's book, Christ-Centered Preaching, then you're familiar with this illustration where he describes preaching and preparing sermons as if we're explaining an acorn. Now, that acorn, you can describe a lot about it. It's got a pointy bottom on it. It's got a really smooth base, but a kind of a rough kind of a cap that you can pop off and you can crack it open. And there's a seed inside. There are multiple layers. He says you can explain a lot about that acorn, but if you don't relate that acorn back to the oak from which it fell and into which it will grow, then you really haven't explained the acorn. And so what I began to think through that illustration, and I'm like, okay, so if the oak tree has DNA and every acorn that falls from it shares that same DNA, then what if we could discover the strands of DNA in the oak tree? And wouldn't we expect to find those same strands in every acorn or every text or theme or topic that relates to the oak tree? Now, the oak tree for us is the overarching biblical meta-narrative. It is the story of grace. It is the gospel. And we know from biblical theology that it goes creation, fall, redemption, and restoration, with final restoration being glorification. So those are 4 strands. And it's not just that those strands represent the gospel story, but we see those strands actually in every text of Scripture. And even beyond that, we see these strands woven into our own lives. So this framework is a discipleship tool, but it's also a homiletical structure for thinking through every text, so that when we come to this, we're not using creation, fall, redemption, restoration. We're using different terms that relate to these things. We say principle, what is true in the text, creational. Then we move on to the problem. How does the flesh resist what is true? And that's the fall. Then we go on to the gospel, where we want to say, how does Jesus redeem our resistance? And that's where we're looking at redemption. And we see specifically the centrality of substitution, substitutionary life of Jesus, substitutionary death and resurrection of Jesus. And then once someone enters into that redemption, where we live in union with Jesus, which is our foundational doctrine, union with Christ, or we can say abiding in the vine, the branch connected to the vine. Then we have restoration, which is possible. We call it response, where we live our lives now in response to what it is to be saved by grace and united to Jesus as our justifier, as well as our sanctifier. Because now what's going to happen is, as we are in union with the vine, the sap of the vine flows into the branch, produces new desires, new motivations, and new abilities, so that the entire life of the believer is one of grace. Justifying grace, adopting grace, and sanctifying grace, all based on our union with Jesus. So when we come to this, we have this biblical meta-narrative that we have turned into a homiletical framework. And so we use PPGR. And I do want to make sure we know that when we're talking about these terms and saying we can actually, if we follow the process that's in the system that we built, that is part of the Preach360 Sermon Studio, that we're not talking about shallow sermonettes here, okay? We're not going there. That's not what we mean at all. We really are talking about biblically deep, theologically robust, gospel-rich, life-changing expository sermons. Yes, drafting that in a single afternoon. It seems too good to be true. But again, we're talking about a guided process We're talking about a very focused process, not random study, not scattered notes, but a very purposeful plan of action that we're going to follow. Okay? So that's what we're going to look at. We have this glorious calling. We have this heavy toll that it takes upon us because we don't have the roadmap. But now we're going to have the roadmap. We're going to have the blueprint. And that's what we're going to look at in our demonstration, where the simple process of building a sermon, even in an afternoon, and what it's going to look like. We think of it as building a house. Now, if you were to tell me that I were to have to build a new house every week, I wouldn't know where to start. I have no idea. I have no construction skills whatsoever. Most of us went to seminary and we learned structures for sermons, and incredibly helpful. But as you get into the week to week to week prep process, you realize that either what we learned was maybe too complicated or it was too simple. And we're trying to figure out a blueprint that actually works Sunday to Sunday to Sunday, that is faithful to Scripture. So the process that we follow has 3 blocks. And I'm going to show you those blocks, because if you can think in blocks, then it's going to help you immensely with the mental picture of what you do week to week to week in preparing a sermon. So what we're going to look at is that the Preach360 Sermon Studio, okay, it's going to provide a 4-hour guided, focused, step-by-step process. There is no guesswork in this. You know exactly where you're going to start. You know exactly what's going to be next. And you're going to know exactly when you're done and ready to preach. Because there's not going to be 3 points to invent every week. And that's stressful, having to come up with your own original outline. Now, our outlines, yes, will be different from week to week to week. But there's not the stress of having to invent it and have this thought of, is this outline even right? Is it really reflecting the text? Or have I forced my outline on it? Or am I forcing my sermon into the outline? So there are a lot of questions that keep us up late on Saturday nights. And so you'll never get stuck with what I'm going to show you. You'll always know what to do next. Okay? So what we're going to look at is a 3-block process. Block 1, we're going to pour the foundation. This is going to happen where we have our devotional reflections. We're going to prime our own hearts before we actually get into the process of building the sermon. We're going to generate an exegesis guide. This is going to be like our own personal commentary on this text for this sermon. It's not going to be a random study. It's going to actually be exegesis that follows the PPGR, creation, fall, redemption, restoration framework in that text. So it's not just random across the board studying. It is very purposeful, guided exegesis. Okay? And we're going to also, in this process, identify a key word. The key word is kind of the secret sauce to the whole thing. It's going to give us expository focus as well as homiletical clarity. You can't study everything equally, but you can study something in the text really deeply and bring everything to bear on it. And that's kind of the idea with the key word. So block 1 is simply pouring the foundation. We're getting ready to build the message. This is all of our preliminary content, okay? That usually we give about an hour to. Then we're going to go to block 2. And you say, an hour? What do you mean? Well, this is, remember, it's guided, okay? You aren't inventing anything. You're just following along with your coach. Block 2, just trust the process here, is we're going to build the structure. And this is the biggest part. We're going to have a sermon introduction. We call it the prelectio. And I'll show you the parts of that as we look in the demo in just a moment. But we're going to set up a sermon that people can't wait to hear. That's what we're doing with this, okay? We're going to build a relevance bridge between the original audience's context, their sin, their struggle, their need for grace. Now we're going to show how their sin, their struggle, their need for grace is the exact same sin, struggle, need for grace that we have today. And that's going to be the relevance bridge. Show you how this passage didn't just speak to them, it speaks directly to us. And so because of that need, we're going to clarify an opportunity for change of how we can be changed by grace as we live in union with Jesus. And then we're going to invite people to listen with anticipation and expectation that we're not just giving a biblical historical lesson, but that we are going to be leveraging this to our lives. And that we can expect the Spirit to be living and active in this message to change us right where we are. That's the expectation that leads to anticipation for the reading of the Scripture and then moving on into the PPGR movements. Because we, again, are not inventing artificial points. We're simply folding the organic DNA in the text, the organic gospel DNA in the text. And it's all going to be focused with this keyword. And the conclusion is going to be the gospel stamp, We want to end upon a grace statement that invites people to receive Jesus if they have not, and even if they're believers, to rest themselves fully in the finished work and the present life they have in Jesus. So block one, we're going to pour the foundation. Block two, we're going to build the structure out and we're going to fill it in. And then in block three, we're going to seal the cracks, meaning we're going to revise our manuscript, go through it and revise it. We're going to then optimize it. We have a special optimization tool which will analyze your manuscript and show you specific places that you can make it more either clear or redemptive or practically helpful to your audience. Okay, so that's the summary of where we want to go. We want to recognize that preaching is a glorious calling. There's a pressure that we feel because of the unfinished sermon, and it's really heavy toll that we pay for that. And yet there's a biblical framework that we can use to understand hermeneutically every text and then turn that hermeneutic perspective into a homiletical structure grounded in solid theology, processed through homiletical structure. And here we have it right here, the 3 blocks for the foundation, build the structure, and seal the cracks. Those are your 3 blocks. And usually we can have that done if you just follow along and stay focused and turn off your notifications and don't look at ESPN.com or any news or Twitter X, then you can get this done in 4 hours. A lot of the problem is our distractions. Follow along with this. Now, you don't have to actually be done in 4 hours. But I am saying in an afternoon, you can draft your full manuscript. And you may want to have that done by Wednesday so that you can let a couple of days pass where it's marinating. But it's done. Your manuscript's done. You aren't having the pressure now to create it. Now what happens is you get to let it simmer, let the Spirit move in you in different ways so that by the time you do your revision and optimization, it only takes an hour or two and you're ready to preach and you can rehearse. So that's the plan. All right, what I want to do now is to give you a behind the scenes look at how this new web app works. We built the Preach360 is built upon, it's the only AI assistant built upon the Preach or the PPGR preaching system itself. And so this is all before AI. All the AI component is doing here is walking you through the process and helping take your engagement with the text, helping you create a manuscript that you can then edit and revise and make your own. That's what we're doing. I'll show you exactly how that works. So let me change my sharing here to a different page where I'm going to show. Let's see if this will be what we can show here. Okay, perfect. Now, as we're opening this up, I'm going to look at a comment here, a question. I said there are 4 concepts: creation, fall, redemption, and consummation. So creation is the principle, what's true of the text. The principle is going to be something that is true in the text about God, about the human condition, or our experience in the world, our universal experience. Something universally true. Those kind of 3 concepts that make up what a principle could be from the text. And the fall is the tension in the text. Absolutely. If you're thinking about, let's say, a storyboard, you could say every good story has 4 parts, actually. It has the stage that is set, has conflict introduced. It has the hero who shows up and does some act of heroism, whereby at the end, that the response, the postscript to the hero's action is the last part of the story. So we have those 4 parts of the story. In the biblical meta-narrative, we have the same thing. The stage is set in creation. We have conflict introduced in the fall. We have a hero show up in Jesus. And we have the new life that can be lived in response to his great act. So we have this tension. That's a good way to put it. That word's good. There you go. And the flesh is the sin of the passage. The flesh is just what's within us that is resisting what's true. Now, if we go deeper into the preaching system, you'll realize that our resistance can be to the principle in 2 ways. One, it can be our internal sin that we are manifesting outwardly, or it can be the sin of the world affecting us. So our resistance is going to be how the truth deals with us and our own identity, and how it deals with how we process, whether it's loss, pain, injustice, all sorts of things. Whether we're going to believe the truth or believe the lie of an idol, whether we're going to walk in God's ways and trust him or go our own way. Those are kind of the issues there. It's a lot deeper, but for the sake of answering this good question. And then redemption is Jesus. Yes, that's the gospel, that's substitution. And consummation. Use the word response or restoration. Consummation is really the end of restoration, okay? So in those biblical terms, you might often hear it: creation, fall, redemption, consummation. If we're thinking redemption to include both, let's say, justification and sanctification, where sanctification is the restorative aspect of redemption, then that's fine. What I'm doing is I'm saying that there is this fourth concept of restoration where the Spirit does actually, because of our union with Jesus, restore us to being able to produce fruit, be fruitful trees, fruitful bearers of the Spirit's work in our lives. So the idea here is we could say we're looking at maybe 5 categories: creation, fall, redemption, restoration, and yes, partial restoration. So that complete restoration is the return of Jesus' consummation and glorification from then on, to put it in theological category, if that helps. But yes, the final fourth part of the message is the application. That's what we historically, classically, traditionally call application. Yes. So good eye on that. Okay, so now we see our user interface here. This is the Preach360. This is a completed sermon that I just wanted to show you. I'm going to bring it down into my screen so I can get a better view of it myself. The wider your screen, the more effective, or I guess the wider you can have your workspace with this. So here we have, and of course, this is the left dashboard where you have your sermons. We have tutorial libraries. This is right here, the preaching system, where you actually will learn the system itself if you want the theological foundation for what we're doing in each message. And of course, there's a lot of other content in here as well. But as far as sermons, you can have series. Let's just go to the last one that I finished here. So what I want to show you is on the left, you have your roadmap. This is your blueprint. And there are 2 ways to see your progress. One is by checking out this process right here, where we have, you'll notice, pour the foundation. And when we pour the foundation, we start with, of course, our text and our audience. What is the text of the sermon and who is our audience? That's going to be really important. We don't want to just exegete the text. We're going to exegete actual context where we are preaching this message. It might be, and I'll show you in a minute how you start it. It might be a youth group. It might be an ordinary church service, but you're going to want to give some more details. Say, this is a church service in North Georgia. This is going to be a service attended by those who are largely longtime believers with a handful of skeptics. And you could say that. You could say, this is being preached in Indonesia, or this is being preached in India, and give the cultural context there too. We have tools built into this that will do cultural analysis in relationship to the worldview of your context and how that contrasts with a biblical worldview. So more on that in a minute. So we're going to go to our devotional reflections to prime the heart before we actually get into the actual work of the sermon. We're going to do an exegetical analysis. And this exegetical analysis, you can do it 2 ways. One, you can have the Socratic guide walk you through the exegesis, question by question by question, or you can have it generate this guide for you based on curated theological sources that we've built into the program. And I'll show you what that looks like. For example, I had it create this exegesis guide right here for me. This is the panel. And by the way, the panels here, we have multiple panels, and they're all right here. And by the way, I'm using night mode or dark mode. We can turn it into light mode too, if you prefer, like this. But because it's reflecting off of my glasses, I'm putting it into dark mode, if that's okay. So when we get to the exegesis, what you're going to essentially receive is an overview of the text. You're going to have some key words identified, potentially for you to use. You're going to have the 3 rings of context: grammatical and literary, historical, cultural, and the redemptive context. You're going to have a number of word studies that you could expand in this. And when we talk about word studies and grammatical things and syntax, you can do anything in this program, essentially, that you can do in Logos. It has the same search capacities, and we have curated theological sources from which it will draw its information. So then it goes into the PPGR mapping, where it will now do the questions that you can go by one, or you can have it produce this for you, and then you can read through it and expand where you want to, so that in reading through it, it becomes your personal commentary on this particular message within our PPGR biblical framework. So you'll see in the principal exegesis, it'll do fact-finding, again, the context, it'll show the tension, it'll show where in the text this is, and give you a sample principle statement to consider. Again, in the problem, it'll show the resistance of the human heart, the outward actions, how this is manifested, as well as the internal motives of why it's done like that, what the idols are. It'll show the fig leaves of how we try to cover ourselves rather than look to Jesus for various things. There's evidence in the text for it, and it'll give a sample problem statement. And again, the gospel will go through these 4 redemptive questions, what grace is needed in the text from the believers original recipients, or what grace is provided in the text. How does Jesus fulfill the command in the text, and how is he the better or ultimate example of the one in the text? We'll talk about substitution and heart reorientation. The great exchange is always part of this. We'll show the evidence in the text and a gospel statement. And the response, exegesis. We will talk about how this rewires the heart, examples of application, evidence in the text, and a response statement. We'll also have some theological insights into this text, as well as an expository summary, a verse-by-verse expository summary. And here's the cultural analysis report, meaning how does this passage contrast with secular psychology or a religious moralistic worldview, or even an Islamic worldview, or an Eastern religion Hindu worldview, depending on where you are in the world, or even here now, where we are outside of Atlanta. All these worldviews have various pockets of being predominant in our region. And then there's the Christ followers. So as far as sources, this is used from D.A. Carson, John Stott, Martin Lloyd-Jones, and Leon Morris. It shows you what it drew from for that. So you could read those 4 commentaries, or you could have this developed for you. Either way, you can now go more deeply into the study. And if you ever wanted to do more in-depth study with this, you could, let's say, go back up to our word studies. Sorry if that's giving you a headache. You could go up to the word judge and click on this Ask Our AI, which is, again, trained in the PPGR system. It's connected to curated sources theologically. And you could say, go deeper into this word, show where it is in the, let's see, New Testament, and give pastoral insights into it. So what this is going to do is engage with your let's go deeper request. And when it processes that, and it might take it a minute because this does do deep thinking with regard to especially biblical theological concepts. It is on a absolute zero hallucination mode whatsoever. And you'll see here in the green, it's going to then expand it. So you have the word study, but you have the broader New Testament usage, pastoral insights. And yes, you can go even deeper. You can ask it to create charts for you and all kinds of stuff. Like I said, there's no depth that you can't go to with the study theologically with this. You can put this in your notes panel if you want to. Here I did an interlinear analysis of the text with specific pastoral theological notes to it. You can drop, if you like Logos, you can do some study in Logos and just drop it here in your notes. And all these panels are adjustable, and you can add different things to it. You can add your manuscript. You can add, we don't want that many panels because you can't read them, right? But if you had a 34-inch wide screen, you could do everything on this thing. You could just open it totally. That'd be amazing. Anyway, here, we're still on our Pour the Foundation. So let me check my time. Okay. Exegesis is absolutely one of the strongest parts of what this tool can do. Then you'll go through your keyword process of deciding on what keyword you're going to use for the entire passage. And again, it will help you do that. There's so much here, I'm not sure whether I'll be able to find it or not, but it will guide you through developing your keyword. And here it asks, okay, here's where I did it. We moved to a critical part of the system, the keyword, and it explains what a keyword is. And you can even say, I picked judge in this text, and you actually can ask for some suggestions. If you go to exegesis, you'll see it's already suggested a few words you may want to consider here. And then you go from your keyword to your principal statement, because in our system, we're going to not have main points, but 4 statements, PPGR statements. And once you get your principal statement, it's kind of like the big idea. And then they're like dominoes. Once you have that, it just falls right into the problem. And the problem pivots to the gospel. Gospel pivots right to their response. Now, every text is going to be unique because it is a different text, right? And the keyword is you could preach 4 sermons on the same text and use 4 different keywords, and the sermons are going to be different. They're going to overlap, of course, but they're going to be fundamentally different. I did a weekend retreat where we did John 15, 4 and 5, and 4 sermons on those 2 verses. And yes, they overlapped, but because I used different keywords, the sermons were effectively differently focused with the primary aim. Because what we're trying to do is not say everything. We want to be as simple as possible, not simplistic. What simple means is easy to understand. And that requires being clear. And when we can be clear, we can then be focused. And when you add those things together, simplicity, understanding, focus, clarity, then people, by the Spirit's enabling grace, are able to get it. And people remember, people appreciate sermons that had that kind of clarity in focus because they're usually really, really helpful. So principle statement, problem statement, gospel statement, response statement. And again, this will walk you through how to develop each of those statements. And it'll make sure that you're good with it and lock it in before you move forward. Then there's an anchor illustration that will weave throughout the entire sermon. We aren't trying to come up with 4, 5, 6 illustrations. We want to have one because that, again, is going to bring cohesion, memorability, and it's going to be really helpful if we have these really basic concepts, keyword, anchor illustration, opportunity for change. It's going to help us present, and it's going to help them hear, listen, and understand and track with you really, really easily. So that's important, the foundation part. In the building the structure, what's going to happen right out of the gate is it is going to create 2 expository maps for you. And I'm going to show you here what these look like. I'm going to take away the notes panel. I'm going to put in the maps, expository maps over here on the right. It's going to show you how you could frame a sermon, either verse by verse or using the PPGR concepts in order. If it's verse by verse, sometimes it doesn't go principle, problem, gospel, response. It might go problem, principle, gospel, response, or in any other order. But what the PPGR does is it exposits the text in the same way that verse by verse does. Because remember, expository does not mean verse by verse. Expository means from the text. And as long as it's from the text, you can do it verse by verse, or it might be more effective sometimes to do it conceptually. Tell people, see, what is the truth in the text? How does my heart resist this? What did Jesus do to redeem my resistance? And how can I now live in a new way? The new way of the Spirit versus the old way of the flesh. The new way of the gospel rather than the old way of the law. All those are things that are built into this system, in this app. All right, so we're going to build the structure next. But the expository maps are so incredibly helpful, my goodness, in working through this. Then you'll decide, okay, let's move forward. If you're going to go PPGR, then that's how it's going to work you through it. If you want to go verse by verse, you'll still do your study of the text, PPGR. But at the end, you'll have the opportunity for everything you've imported into it and the manuscript it's created based on your inputs. You can then revise all that with a click. It'll tell you, okay, let's do verse by verse then. And it will everything you've done, just make it a verse by verse sermon. But then again, remember, after all that, you're going to go through it and revise it and own every single word in this message. But as far as the structure, the prelectio is where we're going to do our introduction. We're essentially going to say, here's the text. And I wonder if I can show you how it leads you through that, because it is just absolutely brilliant. If I can get to the place where it says, okay, now it's time to go through. Well, I did a lot of work with this, with questions about illustrations. Can this illustration show me how it weaved through the whole message? If you're wondering, can this one illustration be used in every movement? It'll show you exactly how it can be used. Really helpful for me. Okay, here are the questions that you're going to deal with. You're going to state the text. You're going to introduce your anchor illustration. You're going to build your relevance bridge, and then state your opportunity for change, and then invite people to listen. You can do this in batch mode or one by one. It'll just lead you through them. If you want to do it in batch mode, then what I suggest is copying all these, going into the little chat window, hitting this arrow button, and then pops it out for you. So you can just write all you want to write in this one. Because in the little chat window right here, if you accidentally hit return, then it sends it. And that's often frustrating. But if you hit this, then you can type stuff and you can hit enter all you want and all kind of stuff. So let me take that out. The point is, it'll walk you through each of these movements and ask you the specific questions that are part not only of our macro framework, PPGR, but our micro frameworks that build out each of the movements. Like I said, you'll never have a question about what you're going to do next or how you're going to build out the message. And that goes all the way through the conclusion. Seal the cracks is where we revise the manuscript, because let's see, the manuscript is now here, and I'm going to take out my exegesis. You can also close the roadmap over here if you want more space. Manuscript, expository maps. I think I'm going to take the maps out. I could have my exegesis over here as I work through it. I could have my maps over here, whichever is most helpful in going through this manuscript. But you'll go through the manuscript, and anytime you want to change, adjust, shorten, make something clearer, you can always just highlight it and talk to it in this little button, and it will do whatever you want it to do with regard to revising. Or you can simply revise it yourself. So you can write in the panel over here. It's all editable, and you can copy it, you can export it. All these tools up here for formatting. If you get stuck in any place, if either there's a tech glitch or you're just wondering about the keyword or wondering about any of these movements, then you can go over here to the help button and go to the ask a question and just ask the question you have. This is going to be your friend as you work through sermons. If you ever have an issue, and again, this is also trained as well, so you can trust this. All of this has hallucination stops on it, and it has our framework. It has the entire PPGR system of probably 400 pages of content that has been developed for this to function as its brain. Okay, so let's see. You'll do the expository maps. Let's get down to the seal of the cracks. You'll revise it. Then you'll actually, when you have your manuscript and you're ready to revise it, it'll ask you, are you ready to revise? And then you say, yes, revise. Then it will create this optimization report, which will go through your entire sermon. It will have a coherence check to make sure that all the parts are there. It will then do an AI fingerprint to make sure that, hey, we don't want to preach an AI sermon. And so if there are words or phrases that somehow show up in this that are triggers, it's going to show you. So we don't want to do that. We want to go through and edit that out. And the movement by movement diagnostics, it's going to say, hey, in your prelectio, here's kind of a snapshot. Here's where it was really strong. And here's where you can actually make some improvements, specific targeted improvements. And if you want to just go to the improvement section, you can go to the bottom and it will give you a global evaluation of how everything looks out of 5 stars and tell you why. And it'll give you 5 top quick wins. Here are 5 things that you can do to make this sermon better before Sunday. So rather than have to do your review after Sunday, you can do a really good prep review for this using your optimization report. And then, of course, you'll rehearse, and it will give you suggestions even on your rehearsal. Places you might want to slow down, things you might want to emphasize. It'll maybe go back over your audience and to be mindful of this audience to really speak to these issues. So lots here as far as the 3 blocks, but this is how you're going to do it in 4 hours. Simply, you're saying, this looks like a lot more than 4 hours. It's really not. If you lock in, block out distractions, and follow as it asks you questions in this panel right here. It's simply going to ask you, and you respond to it, and you give the material that you want. And if you ever get stuck, just ask it. Say, do you have a suggestion for this resistance? Do you have a suggestion for an illustration here? Whatever you want to do, you can ask it and engage with your Socratic coach, right, in this panel. And then these panels can all be moved around. They can be, adjusted, all that kind of stuff. At the end, you're going to have an outline. This is the outline of the sermon, which could be used as a pulpit copy. Rather than have an entire manuscript, and it's also editable. You can change anything that you want. But this goes through all the sermon, and it gives you an outline version of the message that covers every aspect of it at the end. Okay, there's a lot more that we're developing in this. This is version 1. But as far as fulfilling this promise to complete your sermon manuscript in a single afternoon, this is how you do it. And then you would obviously spend some more time doing the revision and optimization. Okay, so I am going to leave it at this right now and look and see if there are any kinds of questions, comments, or reflections that you might have. All right, Joram, yes, understand you will receive the copy of this recording for sure. Yeah, Joram is in Africa, so they're on a different time schedule, obviously, over there. And yeah, Diego, I don't think I can get the audio up. Let me see if I can. Maybe I can get your audio to work. I might not be able to.
Did you hear me, McKay?
Well, you did it. Yes, Diego, go ahead. Awesome.
Did oh. Hey, McKay, awesome. This is really amazing, the Preach 360. So basically, I like it because it shows you how. So normally what I do when I just go to Google Docs, and I do follow your steps, but here is this the system is really good because it basically walks you through like what to do next. And if you have that idea, you put it in there. For example, you have your keyword, and you ask the AI there to kind of help you out and sharpen it. So basically, if you do this right, step by step, all of that, you'll have your sermon ready, right? That's the goal.
Yes. After you finish, what it will do is that once you finish, like for example, in the left panel over here, pour the foundation. Once you give inputs, it's going to then record them where you can actually go back and look. So, okay, keyword judge. My principal statement, hover over it. Believers are not called to judge the sins of others. Problem statement, the flesh naturally acts as a self-righteous judge. The gospel, Jesus was judged for our logs, not just our specs. So the response is that in Jesus, we get to trade the role of judge for the role of ambassador of mercy. And those are our 4 statements that we will then build out the message with when we get down to build the structure. An anchor illustration, for me, it was going to have a new prescription for eyeglasses, because this is the logs and the spec passage. Opportunity for change, rather than be known for hypocrisy, what if we could be known as people of mercy? And then we would simply get into the structure. where we would build this out, and it'll walk you through.
So once
That's
you,
why.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so once you get to the build the structure, let's say the pre-lectio, you have to, does it allow you to type like let's say you have an idea and you type that out?
Absolutely. It is going to be, if I can get to the beginning of the pre-lectio, let's see, this is, okay, I think I'm going back. This is what I like put in. This is some of my
Oh,
content. So it asks me these questions, and I responded with these replies, and it uses my replies to build out the content of the manuscript. So
oh,
basically, when you finish the pre-lectio right here, you see that right there on the left?
yeah, I see it.
When you finish all the questions, it's going to then draft. In this panel, you'll see it say generating. It's drafting, you're putting your content into this panel. But it's writing it so it's very clear and kind of really, it's just laying it out in an organized way for you that you'll go back and you can edit and revise yourself. Then when you finish your principal movement, it'll do the same thing. You'll see a little button here blinking, it'll say generating, and it will take what you have put in there in the manuscript. And so if you were to start a new sermon, for example, here's how you would do it. And I'm going to put it in. Let's say it's going to be the eternal word, and it's going to be John 1 through 1. Let's go to 14. This is how you start a sermon. You can do a lot of versions you can choose here. I'm going to say a youth group, since that's what you do, Diego. And so begin sermon, click. All right. So what it's going to do for starters, you can see how these things are no longer green.
Yeah.
All right. This right here, these are no longer green. This is showing you what you have left to do, these steps. But don't freak out because they go pretty quickly, especially the pouring the foundation goes quickly. And so we're right here at text and audience. And when it has this orange arrow, that's the step you're on right now.
Okay, got it.
So when you finish a step, it checks it off. And when you're on one, it has an arrow. And of course, it's going to start off with these devotional reflections. And the 5 devotional reflections are: how does the passage encourage you? How does the passage challenge you? What are things about this passage that you really want your listeners to get? What pushback do you expect from your listeners? Like, what defeater beliefs? How are they going to already resist this teaching? And then 5, what is a specific life change that you want to see in yourself and your listeners based on this passage? So those are the 5 reflection questions that are going to set up the exegesis work. We do this before we get to the exegesis because I really want us to realize that sermon prep is not primarily an intellectual academic exercise. I want it to be devotional for us. I want it to be us engaging with God through His Spirit and His Word, so that we actually are coming to the text as those who need this message before anybody else does. And that we now have our hearts primed for the very real encounter that we'll have through the Word with our listeners. So basically, it's just a time to prime your own heart for it. And I ask folks, don't rush through this. Yeah, you feel pressured, but let's say you're going to say you want to have this done in an afternoon. Here's what I suggest. Okay, so 4 hours, block off 4 hours, and you should be able to have your manuscript drafted. I'm saying drafted in 4 hours. But for the entire sermon prep process, go ahead and block out at least 8. Will you need 8 hours? Probably not. But it gives you now margin in your week to know, I have this much time. I'm going to have it drafted in half of that time. So the rest of the time, I get to just work on the editing, and I get to work on the polishing and the optimization part of it. So I'm not stressed over it. This is all kind of bonus that I get to do in these extra hours. And you know what? If I'm done in 6 hours, then those are 2 hours that I can do something else. But at least we're not saying block off 20 hours. I mean, do you want to block off 20 hours? Then block off 20 hours. It's fine with me. But if you want a more realistic time frame on what it will take you, go ahead and block off maybe what you're used to, but it won't take you as long as it used to. It'll take you a lot less time. But again, efficiency is not our goal. That is not our goal here. Effectiveness in preaching the gospel of Jesus is our goal. Okay? Really want to drill down into that. And if this structure, this is like just we're stacking logs here, but we absolutely must have the fire of the Spirit in order for lives to be changed. So those things are also important to emphasize. So block off as much time as you normally would take in a sermon, and you'll find yourself getting finished a lot sooner and having bonus time for your week.
Thank you, Mikhail, so much for the explanation. I think this is really the system is wow. It's it's great. It's really good.
Great. I'll go ahead and answer this question here, just to kind of show you what it does.
Yeah.
Okay. So how does this passage encourage you personally? And I mean, of course, there's no right or wrong answer with this, but Jesus isn't only Savior, He's Creator. Whoa. He's made everything that's been made. Okay, wow. And conversely, he isn't only creator, he's savior also. So we have that. That's a massive truth. Remembering that the one who saved us is the exact same one who spoke the cosmos into existence gives us such confidence and rest. Yeah, he's not just a savior. He is the strong, sovereign God, the eternal word. So how does this passage challenge you? And we could, I'm often not mindful of his cosmic reign and authority over the details of my life. And then again, your Socratic coach engages you a little bit. It's easy for us to lose sight of his cosmic reign when we get bogged down in the daily details. Remembering his authority is a beautiful invitation to rest, rather than feeling like we have to manage and control it all ourselves. And so 5 questions, then you do exegesis, then you do your keyword and your statements. That can all be done in an hour if we're focusing with this. And that gives us so much time then to say, okay, now we get to build the structure out. But if you're somebody who likes to break up your study into multiple pieces, then hey, look, you have an hour and a half. Say, I poured the foundation today. I'm good. Move on to something else. Because tomorrow, that's what you can do. Build out the structure. And that will take place in one sitting. Or maybe you want to go through the problem movement or whatever it is. Here's the thing. You're going to know exactly where you are in the process. There's no guessing as far as how much more do I have to do. So, if something happens midweek, there's a crisis and you have to put your sermon on hold, you can have confidence that you know what you're doing next, how long it's going to take you, and you can find the time. It's not going to take you 20 hours. You can find the time to do that. So, yeah, thanks, Diego, for that. Thanks for getting your audio on. Way to go. I didn't know you could do that.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. This system is
Anybody
working.
else? Anybody else? Now we know you can actually use your audio. So feel free to do that if you want to. Anything else y'all got? Well, if you want to check this out, preach360.com, 2 weeks, 2 free weeks, free trial, test drive this thing, see what you think. And we are, I should say right now, we're migrating our email login server until about 2 o'clock. That'll be kind of an ongoing tech update. So about 2 o'clock, if you want to check back and log in, that would probably be the best, most, let's say, way to get started today. All right, Aiden, I noticed that the guided process is influenced by whatever you input into the notes section. This frustrated me yesterday because I had a sermon illustration I put in there. It was a sermon illustration that I wasn't even sure I was going to use. And it seemed like because I put it in there, it influenced the prompts. How much? I'm not sure. Wow, I'm really glad that you mentioned that because we're so new with this that I'm not 100% sure. I haven't had that experience happen yet. Normally, something in our notes panel, we have to actually say, pull this from our notes into the manuscript. So that is interesting that it did that without being instructed to, because all these panels are independent. They are connected, but that is fascinating. I do not have an answer.
I have a follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, McKay.
Hey, good to have you here, man.
Thank you so much. Good to be here. So my frustration just came about because I wondered if it wasn't a sermon illustration that's not going to fit when I'm done with my sermon, or am I forcing the sermon illustration on the sermon?
Yeah.
If so, I'm not sure, but if so, I was wondering, I got pretty far in the exegesis, and then I asked myself how much was influenced by this idea that might not even fit the text, and if so, can it be undone? And it gets messy, right? When you think of
it can 100
2 hours of work to undo.
Here's the thing, the beauty of using this tool is that as your Socratic coach, it can go back and revise anything you wanted to. So that if that illustration wasn't working in the chat window, let's say right down here, let's just pop it out. You would say something like, I want to change my anchor illustration, or I think that this illustration is forcing something on the message that isn't there. We need to change this illustration and change it everywhere and adjust my manuscript to reflect the new illustration. And you can do anything like that you want, which is why no matter how far you get in a message, if you come to a place where you're like, okay, let's say I want to change my keyword and you're already at the end, you actually can change your keyword and it will adjust the entire message to reflect that keyword. Now, if you do that, I always, and no matter what, I say before we preach this, you have owned every word in this message. You go through it, fine tooth comb, everything, and you make it say it's your voice, it's your words, everything like that. But it will go back and revise it with a keyword, with a new illustration, with a new target audience, anything that you're not comfortable with or you want to consider changing, then you can change it. And it will actually do that. And you'll see the changes that it makes in green. Now, that green will last, I think, 60 seconds or until you click into it. If you click into the panel, the green will go away. But that way, at least you can scroll through and see all the changes that it made with regard to the illustration or the keyword, or changing a message from the PPGR format to the verse by verse format. That's another change that you can make at the very end. It's never too late. Don't ever think that, pull that in from my notes panel. Just tell it to either take it out or revise the whole thing with a different illustration.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Diego, in terms of subscriptions, the Preach360, everything you showed us today, $35 a month, we'll have access to what you showed us today. Yeah, right now the standard subscription is everything I showed you and more. Okay, the only thing that is extra is going to be over here under premium content. Premium content has, I've got to log into my premium content. Normally you don't, but we are in the midst right now of that migration of emails. So there could be some glitchy things here happen until 2 o'clock. But premium content, let's see if it'll work for me. Here we go. Okay. So you've got all the on-demand workshops and webinar replays here. We have PPGR video examples, tons. We have our troubleshooting guide. We have all the latest teaching videos. We have the video course, but you have that in the regular standard subscription. The full suite of Preach360 apps. Some folks are going to want some of this stuff. You get the Sermon Optimizer independently of Preach360. You have your own expository map generator where you can just run a text through that and it will give you the maps without having to go through the sermon development. We have an Exegesis Studio. You can plan your preaching calendar. Here's a personal pastoral reboot of your own heart for ministry. This is PPGR 360 on Gemini. In case something ever happens to our web app, you can always get it there. And there's more. Let's say you wanted to go into this and see some content. That's the wrong thing. My bad. Go back. No. I meant to go back to premium content. Yeah, on-demand workshops. You got a lot of stuff here, and all of our video examples. Me doing 5-minute sermons with PPGR to show you how it happens quickly. So you don't have to listen to a 30-minute sermon. You can actually just do a 5-minute thing and get a whole sermon out of it. Yeah, so premium content includes also weekly office hours, personalized time with me. So that's part of the premium content also. And all the things that we're developing, new apps we're developing, all that's going to be in here. We keep developing new things. So that's all going to be present. Live office hours, special prompts for special use cases. I forgot about that. The Preaching That Connects video series, the sermon delivery skill builder video course, manuscript prompt examples, how to study for a sermon video course. So all the new courses and things that will be in premium content over here. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Cool. Very good. Hey, we're after 12. I've kept you in bonus hours now. What do you call it in soccer or European football? We're in extra time here.
Overtime.
So, overtime. We call it overtime. Yeah, they call it extra time. Hey, if there's anything else, let me know. Feel free always reach out to me with any questions. You can either email me, you can DM through school. And if you're not a member of our school community, then go to that. It's a free community, and there's a lot of free stuff there. So go to what is our school website? Let me look and see. That's not going to be it. School.com/preach360. All right. If you just want to join the community, do that. But anyway, hey, look forward to seeing you next week. We do these webinars pretty much weekly, different angles on it. And maybe we'll see you then. If not, look forward to seeing you around the community, hopefully, really soon. Thank you all so much for being with me.